Mum Guilt in a State Agency. Today I'm joined by Danielle Nash, who is the boss lady of the Property Academy. Married, 2 kids, spinning lots of plates. You've got 3 kids in the family, your 2 kids and obviously your husband, and you're running a fantastic organisation. Do you suffer from mum guilt? Talk to me, Danny.
Yeah, I do. But then I also suffer from work guilt. So I think I think the guilt is always there, but I've over the years, I kind of put it away, and I think just be present for what you're doing. So if I'm at home, I've just had 2 weeks on holiday with the kids and my husband and some friends, and didn't really check my emails, checked in a little bit, but I put my out of office on. I trusted my team to cover in my absence, knowing that they could call me if there was an emergency. I don't know what I would have done about it from a boat with
Yeah,
a bottle of rosé on board, but the option was there.
I'm sure a few bottles of rosé.
I know, just for the purposes of the tape, it was only one. But I think it's to be present, and it's, when I'm at work and I'm with Peter and I'm with the team, be there. And I think you've got to try it and divide it up so that whatever you're doing, you're fully present, really.
And just make sure you have enough time. Now, of course, if you're a man, I wouldn't ask if you've got dad guilt, and I know dads do have a little bit of guilt, but it's quite down the pecking order. What advice would you give to the men watching this about helping their career wives? If because that's what a lot of people watching this are going to be doing. That. What advice would you give to men?
I think it's to understand that, and this is all very general, isn't it? It's not
Yes.
true of all women, it's not true of all men, but I think very generally it's to understand that the female journey tends to be different than the male journey in terms of careers. If you want to have children, naturally we have to take more of a career break
Yes.
than men do. And I think what's never discussed, or what I don't tend to see discussed, is when it comes to conversations about things like the gender pay gap, is not necessarily women getting paid less than men for doing the same job with the same experience. What in my opinion can't be unpicked is how you change when you've had a baby. So I've got friends that had babies. Well, I'm going back to work. I'm just going to go back. Nothing's going to change. Had a baby. And then went, I don't want to go back to work. I want to stay at home and be a full-time mum. And equally, the other way around, I had mums that were like, I don't want to go back to work. I want to be at home till they go to school, and then 6 months in thought, I can't do this, I need to go back. So I think that's what can't be unpicked from the conversation, is no one knows how they're going to feel after they've had a baby, a second baby, a third baby, and how that actually changes your motivation.
Do you think a big thing between dads and mums is the classic communication, and you have to basically talk to each other? I can only talk as a man here, and we weren't blessed with children, but I talked to an awful lot of friends who have them. And I think one thing that I've learned is that if on a scale of like 0 to 10, where 5 is normal and 10 is you worry too much and 1 is you have no worries at all, I've come to the conclusion that ladies tend to be around the 7 or 8 mark, because generally you do tend to worry a bit too much,
Yeah.
because it's in your DNA, and men don't worry enough. I'm aimlessly walking around in Chris World at 2 out of 10, but it's the gap. But we don't, and men are absolutely atrocious at talking to their other halves, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think it's just exactly that. It's having the conversation and being open, and not assuming that you know what the other one is thinking and what the motivation behind their actions is. So, for example, like if I'm out, my husband, I would worry that they haven't had any broccoli. My husband would give them a bowl of Weetabix and say, well, they didn't go to bed hungry, so job done. Tick.
Yeah, that's
Whereas I'd be
right.
like, well, they need to have some broccoli. And, but actually, who's right? They have broccoli quite a lot, but sometimes they can have Weetabix and go to bed. That's also fine. So it's trusting the other one to do a good job and having those conversations around what you think is important and why that could cause a problem if it's not addressed.
So it really comes down to communication, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Can I just for the ladies and gentlemen watching this video, an absolutely fantastic book which really helped with my relationship with my wife, is Men Are From Mars and Women From Venus. I don't know if you ever read the book yourself.
Yeah.
And it just made me realise how men and women think differently. But if you can understand how they think, you can have a better appreciation of them. So of the other sex.
100%. And another book that I've just read it on holiday actually, and I would recommend it to everybody, is called Feminism, a history. I think it's called A History of Feminism in 11 Fights, and each chapter is a different fight. So you've got the vote, divorce, love, time, lots of fights that have happened over the last few years. And I think it'd be quite interesting. It was interesting for me to read as a woman because I didn't read a lot of things. I didn't realise a lot of things, such as actually how violent some of the suffrage movement was. But I think also it's really valuable for men to read to understand inherent sexism that still exists, and it's a million times better than it was. It was a million times better than it was when my mum went to work full time when I was 8, and that was unusual, and she got judged by women at the school gates. But there is still work to do.
I mean, we are quite blessed in the estate agency industry because we have the Women in Estate Agency conference, we have the Women in Estate Agency Facebook group, there's the Women in Property, and they're doing an absolutely cracking job, of highlighting the issues, which you have to admit are great for the industry. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think I think everyone is doing a really, really great job, and I think there's a lot of conversation around the progression of women in the estate agency and how to, there's a lot of great women running great businesses. We sit at the Property Academy all the time. For me, I'd like a lot of the conversation to be around how we can help the younger generation of women coming through really progress and navigate, having babies or the desire to have babies or not. With having a career. I think we need to be nicer to each other. There's a lot of judgment, I think, especially that I found with having children. If you go back to work full time, what was the point of having kids? If you don't go back to work full time, what was the point of the suffrage movement? Because you just want to be a housewife. If you go back to work part time, you don't get a say because you've got a foot in both camps and therefore in neither. And a lot of the judgment, I think, comes from other women. I think it'd be nice if we could all be a bit nicer to each other, and also to move the conversation away from our bodies. So to move the conversation away from menopause and domestic violence. They're really, really important topics, but I think in the business forum it'd be great to hear more from women who have achieved great things and are running fantastic businesses, whether suppliers or agents.
Thank you for your time today, Danny.